very much, Summer, and welcome to everyone who's here, whatever time of day it is. So yes, I'm in Sydney, in Australia. So it's the very end of Tuesday here. We're almost in Wednesday, but I do appreciate those of you who have got up very early to be here as well. Now, my task is to kick off our second segment in this global engagement event, which is going to be about research and research collaborations. I'm very delighted to be here today and also to be part of the organising committee. And last year I was lucky enough to be able to present some of my research in this area. But today I'm very pleased to be able to introduce three wonderful speakers from around the world, from the US, from South Korea and from Taiwan, who have kindly offered to tell us a bit about their research collaborations. And we'll follow the same format as the teaching session. So each speaker will have 10 minutes to give us a short introduction to their research, and then we'll follow that with a Q&A session. So I would like to encourage you all to put in any comments and questions into the chat as we go along, and we'll come to that in the latter half of the session. Now, I will start so that we don't delay any further with our first speaker. So, and forgive me, I will make the introductions fairly brief as well in the interest of time. So our first speaker is Garima Sharma, who is an assistant professor at the Corp School of Business, American University in Washington, DC. And her research focuses on sustainability, social entrepreneurship, B Corps, and the related tensions of purpose and profit. She's also interested in understanding how research impacts practice and the topics of rigor, relevance, and knowledge co-creation. And today her presentation is entitled Co-Creating Forward, How Researchers and Managers Can Together Address Wicked Problems. So this is going to be very interesting. She's going to persuade us, hopefully, to stop looking backwards in our research and to collaborate in a more future-focused manner. So Garima, please take the stage.
Well, thank you so much, Alice. And are you able to see my screen? All right. Well, it's such a pleasure and privilege to be here today and be a part of this extremely exciting conversation. When Veronica asked me to talk about research impact, I was so thrilled because I've been part of the V academics community quite closely. And I think we are so well positioned to reach across the research practice divide and really make our scholarship meaningful. So when I talk about research impact, we start with this phenomena of research practice gap, this idea that our research fails to impact management practice because researchers and practitioners really come from different knowledge communities. Now, what does that really mean? That means that as researchers, we are really interested in describing a phenomena and analyzing it, while practitioners, leaders, managers, they're interested in the so what, a prescriptive recommendation. What do I do with this description? We also define our problems very narrowly. We go deep, not broad, while a practitioner has to fight many fires in her day every day. We produce abstract theories and concepts that can go from one context to another, while practitioners are deeply embedded in their own industry, their own organization, their own context. Our research also takes a long time, sometimes 4 or 5 more years from the time we collect data to time it sees the light of day, while again, a practitioner has to have quick answers to everyday problems. So we begin with this sort of really different ways that we approach knowledge and we create solutions to our problems. What I want to present to you today is that one way that we can reach across this divide and make our research impactful is through this process of co-creating. So we've been writing about and studying and thinking about this notion of co-creating for a couple of years now, but the idea of co-creation is not new. Many before us have sort of written about it, and it's pretty simple. It's this idea that academic researchers and managers and practitioners, they set out to research a problem together. And the core to that is that their interests are intersecting. And the assumption there is that when you bring managers and researchers together, the knowledge and solutions are both rigorous and relevant. And here is where I also say that, I make this presentation on co-creation in several different forums. And, I must emphasize that co-creation is not a specific research method. It's more an approach, a sensibility that we adopt as a researcher. So any method that we use, any research method, we can open it up to the sensibility in which we allow, practitioners to join us and become knowledge partners in our research process. So here's a quick take on where we were a couple of years ago. We studied this network at Ivy Business School in Canada called Network for Business Sustainability. So what they would do is that in a year-long project, they would bring a team of researchers and managers together on a specific topic, say sustainability reporting. And this team of managers and researchers would work together, meet every month, and follow the steps of any research process. So from defining a research question to designing the study, collecting data, analysis, and so forth. A couple of things to note here. What we are doing here is us as researchers who come to the table in this project is gathering this evidence, sort of backward-looking evidence of what has happened, and then bringing the managers with their current experience and juxtaposing that past evidence with current experience to make our evidence more current and what we make sense out of it more current. But again, going back to the research practice divide, key concern of those of us who are interested in co-creation, a key concern has been how do you navigate the tensions between the research and practice community. So we've sort of written about the practices and spaces and connections needed to do that. What COVID has made us or any kind of global disruption, even the unfolding climate change crisis, what it makes us realize that the answers of yesterday cannot be relevant to problems of the future. And some of these problems like COVID are not even evident, as they are unfolding. So clearly, as researchers, we're always asked to look backwards in our evidence, and that is not relevant. And it's also not relevant in terms of the way I've described to you co-creation so far, that past evidence is juxtaposed with current experience, because oftentimes when managers bring in their current experience, they're focused on feasibility in terms of what can happen based on their experience, not really imagining together, not really these interrogating possibilities of the future, which sometimes have to be decoupled with what has happened in the past. And then again, reach in this idea of sort of, co-creating forward that I'm going to tell you in a second, we also challenge this assumption of tensions. Some of you who may come from the practice communities are today on the call, and a lot of us who also come from the academic community, it's not always that we experience these tensions. So can we really interrogate that assumption as well, that when you bring researchers and managers together, tensions are inevitable? So I want to sort of shift gears and introduce this notion of co-creating forward very quickly, but I look forward to discussing it with you when the time comes. So we wrote about co-creating forward based on this context of lab at Innovation North. This lab is based in Ivy Business School in Canada. What this lab does is that it's bringing about 25 managers or leaders, innovation leaders of Canadian businesses, and bringing researchers and research team to talk about systems-based innovation. So the objective of this lab is to create a tool, an innovation compass across the 5 years that this lab unfolds. And this compass can help with systems-based innovation to any company, even beyond these 25. And there are tons of collaborators, in addition to practice partners, there are academics and thought leaders who come into these quarterly lab sessions and talk about different aspects of systems-based innovation, which feeds into creating this innovation compass. So I'm going to tell you 4 aspects of co-creating forward that we found in our research in studying this innovation lab. First is that co-creating forward is anchored in a constantly evolving tool. So in this case, for the lab's case, it's the innovation compass, but it could be any tool, a boundary object that is incomplete, that constantly evolves, that brings these 2 communities together. And because it's incomplete and constantly evolving, it takes the gaze of the communities from what is only in front of them to also what is at the end of the 5 years. How do we look forward even beyond those 5 years in the context of this tool? Other piece is that as researchers in this lab, they're enacting their roles very processually. So they're not coming in as only experts following a research method, as I just showed you in the co-creation process a couple of minutes ago. Rather, they participate in this idea of co-creating forward by following the role that the process required. It could be a facilitator, it could be an observer, it could be a problem solver. So they are not tied to a certain kind of role when they come in and imagine what is possible, imagine with the practitioners. Also, co-creating forward has multiple future time horizons. So we have the quarterly lab sessions, the tenure of the lab is 5 years, but the ongoing evolution of the compass can take our gaze even beyond those 5 years, but once the compass becomes available to everybody and keeps evolving. So having these multiple time horizon, again, takes our gaze from just right now to what can come in the future. And finally, it's very deliberate in terms of interrogating possibilities and not just looking at probabilities of what is possible. So the language that the lab uses in terms of what could be instead of what should be. And also as researchers, how do we hold our theories lightly and how do we use them in a problem-solving method in terms of bringing the ideas and bringing the theory by asking what is useful and then integrating that in this ever-evolving innovation compass. So I went through that pretty quickly, but we do have all of this written in detail in this publication that has just come out. And so you're welcome to access that as well if you're interested in more details of the lab. I will end with just thinking about what are the implications for B academics. So my invitation to you or food for thought for you would be, how can we create these spaces of innovation or any kind of spaces for responsible business practices? What would that look like in the B community, in the community of academics and B Corps? And what would the practices look like in collectively imagining and working on our most pressing challenges, where we are deliberate and decoupling a little bit from the past and being innovative and creative with our research methods. And then also being deliberate about, it's very easy to produce, not maybe easy, but our first instinct is to produce our research insights and then engage in translating them. But what if we shift that and think about these tools that are both research-based and based on best practices? How can we make that shift so that this tool becomes the boundary object and we can continue our work together as research practice communities and work on most hairy and pressing challenges? And then how do we as researchers in this space share expertise? We always research about, a phenomena within B Corps, or research about managers, and how can we shift that to research with, the B Corp community instead of only about them? I'm going to end here, and I very much look forward to the Q&A and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Garima. Okay, now I hope you can hear me. The next presentation we have is from Professor Semee Yoon. I think I can see you there, Semee. Yes, who is an assistant professor of sustainable development at the Graduate School of International Studies at Seoul National University in South Korea. Her research interests lie primarily at the nexus of development and environment to enhance the livelihoods of the poor. And as an impact evaluation expert, she is interested in finding innovative solutions to simultaneously alleviate poverty and pursue environmental sustainability. Now, her presentation today is going to tell us about her study on key market enablers to grow the B Corp movement in South Korea and Singapore. In partnership with B Lab Global, she's been working on establishing a framework to assess the readiness of countries to start and scale the B Corp movement. So I'll pass over to you, Semee, and I will encourage the audience again to put some queries and comments into the chat as you think of them.
Thank you, Alice, for the introduction. So it's my pleasure to present our research results, which is a collaborative work with Professor Yoon at Yonsei University as well. So we were really excited when we were asked to conduct a landscape analysis of social entrepreneurship in Singapore and South Korea. So we were excited to join because we also have been curious about why B Corps were not increasing as much in Korea. Yoon has experience analyzing technological innovations, and I have been paying attention to the literature on the role of businesses to address local and global challenges of sustainable development. Yes, it's been a while since the UN SDGs were adopted in 2015, and we were making some progress on reaching some of these targets of certain SDGs. But as you can see from this OECD report of this year, we still have a long way to go, and this may be just too far to achieve if you only rely on government policy action. So if you Google B Corps that are operating in Singapore and South Korea, you may find that the number is not actually that small, but that's because the website offers a whole list of companies that consumers can find that are offering services and goods in both Singapore and South Korea. But to my knowledge, in South Korea as of now, there are less than 20 companies that are headquartered in Korea. And this is a surprise because even companies like Patagonia has become really popular in Korea, but very few of my students know that actually it's a B Corp. So there has been this growth of B Corps that we can observe from the US and many European countries. And so it was also our interest as academics, as we always interact with our young students, why this hasn't really caught on board in the case of Korea, and which we also found was a similar phenomenon in Singapore. So in order to do this, to understand why there are not as many B Corps, we try to understand the social innovation system as a whole in both South Korea and Singaporean context. We found that going through the literature on social entrepreneurship, social innovation, and social enterprises, we need to pay close attention to the dynamic collaboration among stakeholders, as we saw with Garima's presentation. And so in order to come up with such framework, we started off with the innovation systems evaluation that technological innovations go through, but we added more stakeholders and paid close attention to how we need to differentiate these stakeholders based on 335 academic articles that we found related to these themes. And so yeah, as you can see that there are conventional actors that we may pay attention to, like funders and different firms and media and the government. But there was a key highlight on networking organizations and knowledge generating organizations, because the type of jargon that we use in social entrepreneurship may be different, and collaborative learning process was highlighted as key to foster social innovation. And so we tried to identify as many actors as possible and also highlight different roles, different functions, such as interactions and network, not only interactions and networking, but also the role played by hard and soft institutions and different types of infrastructure, such as having co-working spaces or providing financial infrastructure, and also providing R&D, human resource development, etc. So in order to do this, to evaluate the feasibility of using such frameworks to see where different countries are at in their journey of social innovation, we conducted 17 semi-structured interviews with experts that have spent at least 5 years in this field. And in order to obtain various perspectives and insights on social innovation in Singapore and South Korea, we met with people working with diverse actors in the framework that I showed you in the previous slide, ranging from those working in intermediary organizations like B Corp or other places, and also CEOs of social ventures and B Corps, government representatives, academics, and investors. So to briefly describe to you some of the systemic problems that were identified in the South Korean context, yes, the government has been playing a really prominent role in the facilitation and development of social entrepreneurship in Korea. And there are multiple regulations and laws, but there's no overarching legislation that encompasses different aspects that have been outlined in existing regulations. And so there are multiple ministries and departments that support different types of social enterprises, leading to a lack of coordination and policy incoherence that makes social innovators and potential social innovators to be really confused as to who to contact. Another key actor problem we identified in South Korea was that there's a general lack of knowledge generating organizations. We found that there may be young people or even older generation that are interested in becoming social innovators, but there's lack of financial infrastructure to support such education and training. Because right now, in the case of South Korean government, most funding is for supporting producing tangible outcomes instead of training and supporting social innovators. So intermediary organizations may try to provide such services, but their funding is limited, so they can't approach as many people as there may be interest in the general public. And plus, there was a call for need to measure and assess and evaluate social and environmental impact. This type of learning is unavailable for not only social innovators, but also potential social innovators. But among the public, there's a growing awareness because the government has announced that they're going to require big companies to report their ESG impacts. And the public is thinking that such evaluation of impact can be a way of testing legitimacy of social enterprises that are offering services and what they promise to offer. And so all in all, this also accounts for the general lack of technical knowledge and expertise, because oftentimes people involved in social entrepreneurship in South Korea, they tend to come from humanities-based disciplines or social science-based approach, but sometimes there could be solutions that are emerging by applying digital or manufacturing or design technology, and so that they can even provide a different perspective on viewing how to provide services. But we found the social entrepreneurs generally lack such technical backgrounds, and they don't know how to approach someone with such background that may be of that may be interested in working with them. So all in all, this shows that there's a lack of interaction among different types of stakeholders in the social innovation system in Korea. And we found that this seems to exist because there's a clear boundary between nonprofit sectors and for-profit sectors due to different cultures, rules, and values that are underlying why they operate. And plus, the timeline that typically South Korean government operates under, or
1 more minute.
Yeah, sorry, South
That's right.
Korean government operates under, or even multinational companies in Korea, they want to see outcomes at a very short time, and this may be difficult to deliver because collaboration requires much more time. And we found similar problems in the Singaporean case as well, but the major difference we want to highlight from South Korea is that there's no overarching legislation, which should highlight that there should be more flexibility in Singapore. But actually, because when they are financed by certain government intermediaries, they need to highlight how their service is catering to low-income or marginalized groups. So even if there is a B Corp that is working on both environmental and social need, because if they're not able to serve low-income or marginalized groups in Singapore, they will not be identified as a social enterprise in Singapore. So there are these kind of systemic barriers that we're seeing in the case of South Korea and Singapore. So we just wanted to highlight that there could be B Corps in certain countries that are able to collaborate with researchers, but as of now, in both of these countries, B Corps are less interested in collaborating with research, but learning how to see the social innovations scene grow in both country settings. So I'll stop here for today, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them in the later session.
Thank you so much, Semee, and sorry to interrupt you, but strict timetable for today. Yeah. Okay, we have now our last but definitely not least presenter, who is Chiung-Win Tsao. She is a professor in the Department of Business and Management at the National University of Tainan in Taiwan. Her primary research interests include strategic human resource management, the role of women in organizational value creation, and people management issues in family enterprise. Her presentation for today is entitled From Turmoil to Synergism: How Business Leaders' Human Resource Mental Models and Governance Control Impact on Employees. So I'm very much looking forward to our third presentation. Please go ahead, Chiung-Win.
Thank you very much, Alice. Do you hear me well? Okay, so very glad to be here today and I have this chance to share my work with all of you. And I see it's great to meet some new friend, and I also see my good old friend Chloe and Jennifer from B-Lab Taiwan. Thank you for inviting me to this seminar. Okay, so I would like to share with you a work that published recently that I use B-certified corporations as our case study. And actually, since my focus is always on people and always focus on the HR practice, I think many of us are often heard about companies or their leaders talk about peoples are their most valuable assets. However, many people in the business world assume that bad jobs are necessary to keep costs down and the price low. But in fact, this is not necessary. It is a choice. So, of course, there are many different ways to make money. and it's also the why, the inspirations and the background for me to conduct this study is because I met someone, owner of B-certified corporations, and his sharing and his values toward people inspire me a lot, and made me think about what are the reasons behind his core values, and how we could explore more about it, and maybe communicate this specific way of thinking to people. So our work is basically regarding what are the key determinants, okay, that impact the quality of work life of our employees. And of course, many of you may be familiar with McGregor's theory X and the theory Y. And in theory X, they assume that managers believe employees are inherently dislike work and must therefore be directed, controlled to perform a good work. So the theory X actually proposed close supervision, external rewards, and the penalties. However, on the other hand, under the theory Y, managers assume employees view work as a play or a rest, and therefore they can learn to accept and even seek responsibility. So in theory Y, companies or leaders who believes theory Y, they may emphasize job enrichment, satisfactions, engagements, and indirect supervisions. Later in mid-1980s, the concept of strategy HRM also emerged and become mainstream. So HR strategies was divided into control-based and the commitment-based HR strategy. And Dyers, Professor Lee Dyers from Cornell University, he also proposed that by considering configurations from of firm profits, it means firm performance and the quality of work life of employees. And they propose a high-role business strategy, which with a set of workplace practice, they can deliver good profit to shareholders, but as well as good career to their employees. So in contrast, in case of low role strategies, they provide although good profits to shareholder, but with poor career for employees. So with this perspective, we propose our research framework that is a typology of HR mental models in business. And our framework justifies the HR mental model of business with different level of corporate ownership and governance control. So with this typology, it allows us to differentiate 4 different types of companies. So as you could see, with the ownership and the governance control, when it's concentrate, it is good for both profit for the companies. However, when their business owner or leaders have different HR mindset, they may come out different story. So because of the time limit, I will focus on the quadrant 2, the Q2, and I will share more about the synergistic situation, which is good for shareholder and the happy and the productive employees. And the case that I would like to share with you is Cascade Engineering, based in Rapid in Michigan, okay, and it's certified B Corp since 2010. It's more than a decade. So as you could see, they are based in Michigan, and they belong to the rubber and plastic products. And as you can see, they have a very high scores in the overall impact score. And I would like to share more about how they treat their employees. And they concentrate they are illustrated with a very concentrated family ownership, still a private owned by the family Kaler. And they are a highly successful product service innovation, and they has also very innovative employee focused policies. Okay, and I have this special case to meet its founder, Mr. Fred Kaler, during my visit in Cornell University in 2018. And from his sharing and our talk after his speech, I learned that his idea of building a business is to make a place to successful in both financially, but both successful for the well-being of their workers. Okay, so they derive the formation of a natural works team. And here is some of the innovative HR policies developed by Cascade during these years. So they have diversity and anti-racism emphasized. They have program called Returning Citizens, which characterize that they believe all people have the equal chance to work in a decent place. So actually, there are a number of very innovative HR practice and policies that help. They actually that Cascade becoming a very family-like and a very friendly work environment. So I will come to the end of the discussions. Is actually this framework, this typology, wish to shed light on the quality of work-life factors by linking the ownership and governance control of business leader and with their HR mental model regarding how they treat their people. And I believe that with this simple and easy to understand typology, we could have, be more easy to understand and to see the important determinants that actually impact people in the business. So it's critical to understand that firms do not permanently remain in one of the four categories. It could shift
1 minute
over
left.
time. Okay. And so it's ideally, of course, we wish leaders with a different type set of HR mental model or the control levels, okay, they could shift to quadrant 2, which is ideal for both shareholders and their employees. So I have also indicated some future research and directions. And I think it is important to understand what are the determinants of Y type, of course, more commitment oriented or high road oriented HR mental models, and how our business leaders' perception associate with this over time. And this study is already published in a book called A Research Agenda for Family Business, A Way Ahead in the Future. So if you feel interested and would like to know more about it, I'm glad to share it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chiung-Win. Thank you to all of our speakers. Now, we have at least 10 minutes, hopefully, I think that's probably all we're going to have now for questions and answers. Now, and I see that there is one question already in the chat. So that is from Ha Young Jung, and that's directed